At Christmas, my mom snapped, "You're just a burden, always have been," like she was handing out holiday wisdom. My brother smirked and added, "At least I make this family proud," as if paying his own bills wasn't my job. I put down my fork, stood up, and left without a word. Weeks later, Dad called. "Why is the mortgage unpaid?" I just said, "Ask your pride and joy." Guys, this is going to be a marathon story, but I promise you'll want to stick around for the ending. This whole situation played out over the last 2 years, and I'm finally ready to share every detail. Using a throwaway account for obvious reasons, but everything you're about to read is completely true. I need to get this off my chest, because what happened still feels surreal sometimes. Fair warning, this gets pretty intense toward the end, with some serious family drama, but the payoff is absolutely incredible. For those wondering why I'm sharing this now, I just got confirmation last week that the final piece of my plan worked perfectly, and I realized this whole saga would fit perfectly here. So grab some popcorn and settle in. Let me start with the background. I, 33 male, have been the designated family disappointment for as long as I can remember. My younger brother Tyler, who's 29, has always been the golden child in our family, the son who could do no wrong, the one with the bright future, the pride and joy of our parents. Tyler's resume reads like a parent's dream come true. Star baseball player in high school, full scholarship to state university, graduated with a finance degree, works at a downtown investment firm, drives a BMW, wears expensive suits. He's 6 feet 2 inches, has the classic all-American good looks, and has always been smooth with words. Everything my parents ever wanted in a son. Then there's me. I'm 5'10 inches, stockier build from years of physical labor, hands that are permanently stained from construction work. I dropped out of community college after 1 semester because sitting in lectures wasn't my thing. Instead, I started working construction at 19, learning from guys who'd been in the trade for decades. Started at the bottom, carrying materials, cleaning job sites, basically being everyone's errand boy for $12 an hour. But I was hungry to learn. Spent evenings watching YouTube videos about electrical work, plumbing, carpentry, drywall, roofing. Weekends I'd volunteer to help experienced contractors on side jobs just to get more hands-on experience. By 22, I was running my own crew for a mid-sized construction company. By 25, I had saved enough to start my own business with a used pickup truck and a toolbox full of equipment I'd accumulated over the years. By 28, I owned a legitimate construction company with my own shop, multiple trucks, and a crew of 8 full-time employees. Nothing glamorous about it, but I built it with my own hands and brain. We specialized in commercial renovations, custom home builds, and emergency repair work. I developed a reputation for quality work delivered on time and on budget. Word-of-mouth referrals kept us booked solid most of the year. My parents never saw it that way, though. In their minds, Tyler had a real career while I was just doing manual labor. This despite the fact that I was pulling in close to $200,000 a year after business expenses while Tyler was making maybe $75,000 at his finance job. Dad had spent 30 years working maintenance for the county government. Mom worked as a secretary at an insurance office until she decided about 10 years ago that she was done with the working world and wanted to focus on being a homemaker. They lived in a modest 3-bedroom ranch house in a decent suburban neighborhood that they'd bought back in 1995. Here's something that always bothered me about our family dynamic. Success was measured not by actual results, but by appearances and social status. Tyler worked in an office, wore suits, had business cards, talked about clients and portfolios. That made him successful in their eyes. I showed up to family events in jeans and work boots, with calluses on my hands, and usually some minor cut or scrape from recent job sites. Even though I owned my house outright, had substantial money in the bank, employed other people, and was financially more successful than Tyler would ever be, I was still seen as the practical son who wasn't cut out for professional work. The personal life comparison made things even worse. Tyler was constantly dating, always showing up to family events with a different girlfriend, talking about his social life and the expensive restaurants he frequented. My parents saw this as evidence that he was living life to the fullest. I never married, never had kids. Came close to marriage twice in my 20s, but both relationships ended when the women decided they wanted partners with more prestigious careers. I threw myself into building my business instead, working 60-hour weeks, reinvesting profits back into equipment and growing the operation. My family interpreted my single status as more proof that something was wrong with me. This dynamic had been building for years, but the real crisis started about 4 years ago when everything changed for the worse. The beginning of the end came on a Tuesday morning in March, 4 years ago. Dad was at work doing routine maintenance on the county building's HVAC system when he fell off a ladder and seriously injured his lower back. We're talking 2 herniated discs, severe nerve damage, and chronic pain that basically ended his career at age 58. The initial medical bills were crushing: emergency room visit, multiple MRI scans, specialist consultations, physical therapy sessions 3 times a week. Workers' compensation covered some of it, but there were copays, deductibles, and treatments that weren't fully covered. We're talking about $800 to $1,200 out-of-pocket medical expenses every month on top of their regular bills. But the bigger problem was that Dad couldn't work anymore. His doctor recommended early medical retirement, which meant his income dropped from about $3,200 a month to roughly $2,200 in disability payments and early pension benefits. Meanwhile, their monthly expenses stayed exactly the same: $1,900 mortgage payment, $380 for 2 car payments, utilities averaging $200 to $300 depending on the season, insurance, groceries, maintenance on a house that was now 25 years old. Mom hadn't worked in a decade and made it clear she had no intention of going back to work, even part-time. She'd gotten comfortable being a stay-at-home wife and saw returning to work as beneath her somehow. "I've paid my dues," she'd say whenever the topic came up. "I worked for 15 years and I deserve to enjoy my retirement." So naturally, they came to me for help. Not Tyler with his fancy finance degree and investment knowledge. Me, the family disappointment who apparently wasn't smart enough for office work, but was somehow smart enough to solve their financial problems. It started innocuously enough. "Ryan, honey, can you help us with Dad's physical therapy copays this month? It's just temporary until we figure things out." Then it was, "Ryan, we're running a little short on the mortgage payment. Could you spot us the difference?" Within a few months, it became, "Ryan, you know we're really struggling right now." By the 6-month mark, I was covering their entire $2,600 monthly shortfall. Every single month. Their mortgage payment, the gap in their medical expenses, utilities when money got tight, groceries when they ran short, emergency repairs on their cars or house. We're talking about $125,000 over the course of 4 years that I poured into keeping their household financially stable. Here's what really got to me, though. Tyler never contributed a dime. Every family gathering, every holiday dinner, every birthday party, he'd show up talking about his latest big client or some investment opportunity he was working on. He'd brag about taking his current girlfriend to expensive steakhouses or weekend trips to the mountains. But somehow, he never had any extra money to help Mom and Dad with their bills. And my parents never asked him to help either. It was just automatically assumed that I would handle the financial crisis because I didn't have real responsibilities, like Tyler did with his important career. The complete lack of gratitude or even acknowledgement made it so much worse. When I paid their bills, it was just expected. When Tyler bought Mom a $150 scarf for her birthday, she'd post pictures on Facebook bragging about her successful son. When I kept their electricity on and their house out of foreclosure for 48 consecutive months, nobody said a word. Everything reached a breaking point last Christmas when Tyler showed up with his newest girlfriend, Jessica. And let me tell you, this woman was an absolute piece of work in every possible way. Jessica was 24 years old, clearly about 10 years out of Tyler's league in the looks department, with bleached blonde hair, obviously fake breasts, lip injections, the whole Instagram influencer appearance package. She claimed to be a social media entrepreneur with about 40,000 followers who posted fitness photos and tried to sell workout supplements and protein shakes. The moment she walked through the door, she started taking selfies in every room of the house, posting them on her Instagram story with captions like, "Spending the holidays with my amazing boyfriend's incredible family." It was obvious she was treating the whole thing like content for her social media brand. Mom was absolutely smitten with her from minute one. "Jessica, honey, tell me all about your business. How exciting that you're an entrepreneur." Jessica's business consisted of posting thirst trap photos and hoping supplement companies would pay her to hawk protein powder to teenagers. But Mom treated her like she was running a Fortune 500 company. The whole Christmas dinner became the Tyler and Jessica show. She spent the entire meal asking him questions designed to make him look successful, inquiring about his job responsibilities, his income potential, when he might get promoted, what kind of car he drove, where he saw his career going. Really subtle gold digger behavior, but my parents interpreted it as a young woman who was impressed by Tyler's success and ambition. Tyler was playing right into it, embellishing his role at the investment firm and talking about deals and clients like he was some hotshot Wall Street player instead of an entry-level financial advisor making commission on small-time investments. Meanwhile, I was doing what I always did, helping out in the kitchen because Dad's back problems made it hard for him to stand for long periods, carrying heavy dishes, basically being the unpaid help while everyone else socialized and had fun. When we finally sat down to eat, Jessica turned her attention to me with what I now realize was carefully calculated condescension. "So, Ryan," she said with a bright fake smile, "Tyler mentioned you work in construction or something like that?" The way she said construction or something like that, like I might clean porta potties for a living. There was this tone of barely concealed disgust mixed with pity. "I own a construction company," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Built it from the ground up over the past 12 years. She gave me an even brighter fake smile and said, "Oh, wow, that's so authentic. It's really great that Tyler's family has someone who does the hands-on blue-collar work. Someone has to do those jobs, right? Blue-collar work. Like it was something to be ashamed of, something that existed only to serve people like her and Tyler who had real careers." Before I could respond, Mom jumped right in with her own twist of the knife. "Ryan's always been more of the practical type. Not everyone can handle the pressure and responsibility of professional careers like Tyler has." That comment hit me like a punch to the stomach, but I tried to keep my expression neutral. Then Tyler, clearly trying to impress Jessica and show off his family dynamics, added his own contribution. "Yeah, Ryan's definitely the dependable one in the family. Always there when we need something fixed or taken care of." The way he said taken care of, while giving me this knowing look, all three of them knew exactly what he meant. They all knew I was bankrolling their lifestyle. They just didn't care enough to show any gratitude for it. But the absolute knockout punch came later in the meal when Jessica started talking about her future plans. Mom got this dreamy expression on her face and said, "Oh, Tyler will give us such beautiful grandchildren someday. He's always been destined for a big, happy family. Ryan's married to his work. Some people just aren't the family type, you know? Not the family type. After 4 years of being literally the only reason they still had a family home to live in." Tyler actually laughed out loud and added, "But hey, at least we know we can count on Ryan when we need him. He's always been the reliable one in our family." Reliable. Like a piece of machinery. Like a tool you pull out of storage when you need something fixed or paid for. That's when the last piece of my denial finally cracked and fell away. I understood with perfect clarity that I wasn't their son or brother. I was their financial safety net, their emergency fund, their backup plan, and they didn't even pretend to be grateful for it. After that Christmas dinner, I started paying attention to things I'd been deliberately ignoring for years. Like how Tyler always seemed to have money for expensive restaurants, weekend ski trips, and designer clothes, but never had any cash available to help with family emergencies. How he'd show up to family events wearing a new watch or driving a freshly detailed BMW, but would mysteriously disappear whenever conversations turned to Mom and Dad's financial struggles. I also began noticing the ridiculous double standard in how our respective contributions to the family were treated. When Tyler gave Mom some piece of cheap jewelry from a department store, she'd take photos and post them on Facebook with captions thanking her successful son. When I quietly transferred $2,600 into their bank account every single month, it was just business as usual. In February, I decided to run a little experiment. I was genuinely curious about how long it would take them to notice if I stopped covering their bills. So I deliberately forgot to make their mortgage payment 1 month, just to see what would happen. The answer was 3 days. 3 days before Mom was calling me in a barely controlled panic. "Ryan, sweetie, the bank called about the mortgage payment. Did something happen? Did you forget to send it this month?" Not, "We need to figure out how to handle this." Or, "Can we sit down and discuss our financial situation?" Just the automatic assumption that I'd made some kind of mistake and needed to fix it immediately. "Oh, sorry, Mom, I've been swamped with this big commercial renovation project. Let me take care of that today." And I did pay it, but something fundamental had shifted in my perspective. The spell of family obligation was finally broken. That's when I decided to do some actual research into Tyler's real financial situation. See, when you run a construction business in a smaller city like ours, you naturally develop professional relationships with people in all kinds of industries. I had buddies who worked at local banks, real estate agencies, insurance companies, various businesses around town. I started asking casual questions about Tyler's company, his actual role there, what someone in his position would typically earn. The picture that emerged was dramatically different from what he'd been telling everyone. Tyler wasn't the high-powered investment advisor he pretended to be. He was essentially an entry-level financial services rep, making a base salary of about $68,000, plus commissions that were apparently pretty inconsistent. According to my buddy who worked at Tyler's bank, he was living paycheck to paycheck despite his modest income. Constant overdraft fees, multiple maxed out credit cards, perpetually behind on his car lease payments. His entire lifestyle was being funded by debt. The BMW was leased at $650 a month, which was eating up nearly 12% of his gross income. His trendy downtown apartment was costing him almost $2,000 a month, which meant housing alone was consuming about 60% of his take-home pay. The expensive dinners, weekend trips, and designer clothes were all going on credit cards. Meanwhile, Jessica's influencer career was basically non-existent from a financial perspective. Based on her follower count and engagement rates, she was probably making $300 to $500 a month from sponsorship deals, if that. But she was constantly pressuring Tyler to spend money on her. Expensive dinners, shopping trips, spa days, talking about wanting a big engagement ring and a fancy wedding. The real kicker came when my cousin Mike mentioned in passing that Tyler had been telling people around town that I was struggling to keep my little construction business afloat. And that's why I was still single and living alone. He was actively spreading the story that I was barely making ends meet financially. Struggling? I had $380,000 in combined business and personal accounts, owned my house and all my equipment free and clear, had more work booked than I could handle, and was turning away potential clients because I couldn't expand fast enough. But Tyler was telling people I was on the verge of financial collapse to protect his image as the successful brother. That's when I realized the full scope of what was happening. Not only was I subsidizing their lifestyle while being treated like the family failure, but Tyler was actively damaging my reputation around town to maintain his fake success narrative. It was time for some major changes. I went completely cold turkey on all financial support starting in April. Canceled every automatic payment, stopped answering panicked calls about forgotten bills, just totally shut off the money pipeline. I wanted to see exactly how long their perfect little world could survive without my cash propping it up. The answer was about 7 weeks before everything started falling apart. First came the concerned calls about the mortgage payment being late. Then worried messages about utility bills. Then increasingly frantic voicemails about Dad's medical expenses. Each communication got progressively more desperate and demanding in tone. By late May, Mom was leaving messages saying they were going to lose the house if I didn't step up and help the family like I always have. Step up? I'd been stepping up for 4 consecutive years while they treated me like unpaid hired help. Meanwhile, Tyler's carefully constructed facade was beginning to crumble. Turns out when you're already living paycheck to paycheck and spending money, you don't have to impress a gold digger. Things deteriorate rapidly when your commission income drops off due to market conditions. His BMW got repossessed in mid-June. Jessica dumped him approximately 2 weeks later, and within a month she was posting Instagram photos with some older guy who owned multiple car dealerships. Really subtle timing there. Mom started calling me in tears about Dad's stress levels, about how they might lose their home, about how Tyler was going through a rough patch in his career and couldn't contribute to household expenses right then. But never once did she apologize for the things she'd said about my work not being professional. Never once did she acknowledge that maybe I wasn't just the practical son who wasn't family material. In July, I got the phone call I'd been waiting for. Tyler, sounding desperate and completely humbled, asking if I could possibly help the family out during this difficult transition period. He claimed he was getting his financial life back on track and had learned valuable lessons about living within his means. He just needed some temporary assistance to help Mom and Dad get through this crisis. I listened to his entire carefully rehearsed pitch, then asked him one simple question. Where's Jessica these days? Long pause on his end. We decided to go our separate ways. It was a mutual decision. You mean she dumped you the minute your money dried up? Another uncomfortable pause. The relationship just ran its course. It's more complicated than that. No, it really wasn't complicated at all. And that's when I knew I had them in exactly the position I wanted them. Here's what nobody in my family understood about business and money. When you're not hemorrhaging $2,600 every month supporting people who don't appreciate your sacrifices, you can actually invest that money in building something substantial. While they were panicking about basic bills, I was having the most successful year in my company's history. Used the money I'd been wasting on them to buy 3 additional work trucks, hired 6 more skilled workers, started bidding on major commercial contracts that I'd never had the capital to pursue before. By fall, I was clearing close to $320,000 annually and had enough work scheduled to keep us busy for the next 2 years. But the real game changer was getting into real estate investment. Started with a duplex in a solid neighborhood that brought in $3,400 monthly in rental income. The numbers worked so well that I bought another duplex within 6 months. Then I found a small apartment building. By the time winter arrived, I owned 7 different rental properties, generating over $18,000 monthly in passive income. I was building actual wealth while they were struggling to keep their electricity turned on. The beautiful irony was that my real estate investment activities gave me access to information about distressed properties throughout the area. When you're in that business, you monitor foreclosure notices, tax liens, properties heading to auction. It's just smart business practice to stay informed about opportunities. That's exactly how I found out about their house in September. Foreclosure notice officially filed with the county, 4 months behind on mortgage payments with late fees and penalties accumulating every month. Property scheduled for public auction in December, unless the full debt was brought current. I was literally watching my childhood home circling the drain in real time, and I had both the knowledge and the capital to do something about it. But I decided to let them suffer through a few more months first. November brought increasingly desperate calls from Tyler. Jessica was completely out of the picture. Apparently, she'd moved in with her new boyfriend who owned a chain of auto dealerships around the state. Tyler's job performance was suffering because his personal financial stress was affecting his work, and mom and dad were facing eviction in January. Ryan, look, I know things got really messed up between us, but they're literally going to lose everything they've worked for their whole lives. Can't we figure out some kind of arrangement here? We're family after all. Family. How interesting that we suddenly became family again, right when they desperately needed something from me. What exactly is your plan to help them out? I asked. I'm working on securing a personal loan to cover the back payments, but my credit score took a hit recently, so it's taking longer than expected. I just need some time to get back on my feet financially, and then I can start contributing my fair share to help them. How much time did you have to get on your feet while I was covering their bills for 4 straight years? Silence on his end of the phone. Tyler, let me ask you something specific. When Jessica was calling my career blue-collar work and mom was saying I wasn't family material, where exactly were you during those conversations? Come on, man. You know they didn't really mean anything by those comments. Where were you? I repeated, not letting him off the hook. More silence. You were sitting right there laughing along with them because it was easier than admitting you were completely broke while your supposed failure of a brother was keeping everyone financially afloat. I hung up on him and started making some very specific phone calls to set my plan in motion. December arrived quickly. The foreclosure auction was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Thursday morning at the county courthouse steps. I took the entire morning off work and showed up dressed in my best business suit. Charcoal gray, properly tailored, Italian leather shoes. I wanted to look like I belonged in that crowd of serious real estate investors and property speculators. Public foreclosure auctions are pretty routine events if you understand the process. You get maybe 30 or 40 people, a mix of professional real estate investors, house flippers looking for deals, and bargain hunters hoping to find a steal. The auctioneer runs through the list of properties like he's reading grocery prices at a supermarket. When they called 847 Maple Street, my parents' house, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,850 square feet, starting bid $165,000. I deliberately let several other bidders establish the baseline price range. Some guy in a cheap suit bid the opening amount. A local house flipper I recognized from other auctions bumped it up to $170,000. Another investor took it to $175,000. That's when I raised my numbered paddle for the first time. $185,000. The auctioneer scanned the crowd of bidders. Do I hear $190,000? A few more rounds of back and forth bidding. The price climbed to $195,000 before most of the competition started dropping out. Real estate investors are pretty disciplined about not overpaying for properties, even when emotions are involved. Do I hear $200,000? I raised my paddle again. $205,000. Complete silence around the courthouse steps. That was above fair market value for that neighborhood, and experienced investors wouldn't go that high on a property that needed work. Going once at $205,000, going twice, sold to bidder number 23. Just like that, I owned my childhood home. The house my parents had always assumed would eventually be passed down to Tyler someday. The house I'd kept them in for 4 years while they treated me like unpaid domestic staff. I didn't drive by the property immediately after the auction. I wanted to give all the legal paperwork time to process through the system first. My real estate contact handled all the closing details, and a property management company took care of changing locks and transferring utilities into my name. 10 days later, I drove past the house around dinner time. Both their cars were in the driveway, Lights were on in the kitchen and living room windows. They were going about their normal evening routine, completely oblivious to what was coming. The official notice of ownership transfer was delivered by the sheriff's department the following morning at exactly 8 a.m. Legal document informing all current occupants that the property was now under new ownership and everyone needed to vacate the premises within 72 hours. I was on a job site installing commercial flooring when Mom called, completely hysterical and barely coherent. "Ryan, something terrible is happening. Some investment company bought our house at auction, and now they're trying to kick us out. The sheriff was here this morning with official papers, and I don't understand what's going on." I let her panic and ramble for about 30 seconds before responding calmly. "Mom, what's the exact name of the company listed on those papers?" It says, let me look again, Maple Street Investment Properties, LLC. "Ryan, we desperately need your help here. We need to find a good attorney or figure out how to fight this legally." "Mom, I need you to listen to me carefully." "What?" "I am Maple Street Investment Properties, LLC. I bought the house at auction last week. It belongs to me now." Complete dead silence on her end. I could literally hear her breathing stop. "What did you just say to me?" "I bought the house at the foreclosure auction. The property is legally mine now." "You... what?" "Ryan, why would you... This is our family home. It was your family home when I was paying for it every month. When you and Tyler decided I was just a burden who wasn't family material, it stopped being your home." I could hear her starting to hyperventilate on the other end of the phone. "Ryan, please, we can work this out somehow. We can sit down and talk about this like adults. We're your family. You can't just throw us out on the street like we're strangers." Family. When Jessica was calling my career blue-collar work and you were nodding along in agreement, were we family then? When Tyler was telling people around town that I was struggling financially while I paid your bills every month, were we family then? We didn't mean those things the way they sounded. You meant every single word, and all of you knew exactly what you were saying. Now you get to find out what family loyalty actually costs. She started crying harder. "Ryan, please, you have to consider your father's health problems. We don't have anywhere else to go. Tyler can't help us financially right now." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you spent 4 years treating me like your personal ATM while calling me a failure behind my back." "We never called you a failure." "Not family material? Blue-collar worker? Not cut out for professional careers? Not the type to have a real family?" Should I keep going with the quotes? "Ryan, I'm literally begging you here. You have 72 hours to find somewhere else to live. I suggest you start making some phone calls." I ended the call and immediately blocked their number on my phone. The next 2 days were absolute chaos on their end, while I continued running my business like nothing unusual was happening. I had crews finishing up a major office renovation project, was in final negotiations to purchase another rental property, basically living my best life while they scrambled to figure out how to survive without their financial safety net. Tyler showed up at my house on Tuesday evening around 7 p.m. I watched through my front window as he sat in his beat-up Honda Civic, the sad replacement for his repossessed BMW, in my driveway for almost 20 minutes, probably working up the courage to approach my door. When he finally knocked, he looked absolutely terrible. Unshaven face, wrinkled clothes like he'd slept in them, dark circles under his eyes, the whole defeated appearance. The golden boy had fallen hard and fast from his pedestal. "Ryan, we really need to talk about this situation." "No, Tyler, we really don't need to talk about anything." I started to close the door, but he put his hand up to stop it. "Please, just give me 5 minutes to explain our side of this." I looked at him for a long moment, then stepped aside to let him into my house. He walked through my front door looking around like he'd never seen the place before. Custom kitchen cabinets that I'd built and installed myself, hardwood floors I'd refinished, granite countertops, 70-inch flat-screen TV, high-end leather furniture, all of it paid for with profits from my blue-collar work. "Ryan, I know you're angry with us, and you have every right to be upset. We handled things badly, and we made mistakes. I made mistakes. But Mom and Dad are literally sleeping in their car tonight because they can't afford even the cheapest motel room in town. Sounds like they need to start making some phone calls to find alternative housing. Come on, man. Think about Dad's back problems and Mom's heart condition. Funny how you suddenly care so much about their health issues when you need something from me." Tyler ran his hands through his unwashed hair, looking completely desperate. "Look, I admit what we said at Christmas was wrong. We took advantage of your generosity for years, and we never showed proper appreciation. But this revenge is going too far. They don't deserve to be homeless. Don't they deserve it? Tyler, in 4 full years of me paying their bills every month, how many times did you personally say thank you to me?" He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again without speaking. How many times did you offer to contribute even a single dollar to help with their expenses? More uncomfortable silence. How many times did you defend me when Mom was calling my work unprofessional and you were sitting right there laughing along with her? It wasn't really like that. It was exactly like that. You were perfectly content to let me be the family disappointment as long as I was also the family bank account that kept everyone else comfortable. That's when Tyler's desperation finally cracked and I got to see his real personality underneath, the entitled, selfish attitude that had always been there. Fine, you want a complete apology? I'm sorry, okay? We took you for granted and we treated you poorly, and we're genuinely sorry for all of it. There, I said everything you wanted to hear. Now, can we please work out some kind of arrangement here? I promise I'll pay you back every penny eventually. Pay me back with what money? You're completely broke, Tyler. Your gold digger girlfriend left you for someone with actual wealth. Your job performance is suffering because of your personal problems, and you can't even afford basic car payments. I'm working on getting my financial situation back under control. No, you're not working on anything. You're a complete fraud, Tyler. You always have been. All those big stories about your successful investment deals and your bright career prospects? Total lies. You make $68,000 a year, and you're drowning in debt that you'll never pay off. His face turned red with embarrassment and anger. How do you even know details about your pathetic financial situation? Because unlike you, I actually have real professional relationships in this town, built on honesty instead of pretension and lies. That's when both my house phone and his cell phone started ringing at exactly the same time. Mom, getting increasingly frantic as her deadline approached. She wants to talk to you, Tyler said, looking at his buzzing phone with dread. I'm sure she desperately wants to talk. Ryan, please. They'll agree to whatever terms you want. They're completely desperate, and they'll do anything you ask. Desperation is interesting. Where was this level of desperation when I needed a family that actually respected what I was doing for them? I walked over to my kitchen counter and picked up the house phone. Ryan? Mom's voice was pure panic mixed with hysteria. Please, we have to find a way to work this out. We can make this whole situation right somehow. Really? How exactly do you plan to make this right? We'll pay you back for everything. Every single dollar you ever spent helping us. All $125,000 I spent over 4 years, plus interest calculated at current market rates, plus compensation for the damage to my reputation from Tyler's lies around town? I could hear her crying through the phone. We don't have that kind of money available right now. Then what exactly are you offering me, Mom? Ryan, please understand. We're your family and we've always loved you, even when we didn't show it properly. You have a really strange way of showing love and family loyalty. We made terrible mistakes. We said hurtful things that we didn't really mean. But you can't destroy your own family over some angry words and hurt feelings. Some angry words? You think this whole situation is about hurt feelings and bruised ego? What else could it possibly be about? It's about basic human dignity and respect. It's about being treated like a person instead of a bank account with legs. It's about 4 years of holding your family together financially, while you told everyone in town that I was a disappointment and a failure. We never said you were a failure. Not family material. Blue-collar worker. Not cut out for professional success. Not the type to have a real family someday. Ring any bells, or do you want me to keep going with direct quotes? Long silence on her end. Here's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to find somewhere else to live. Tyler's going to figure out how to support himself like an actual adult instead of a spoiled child. And I'm going to turn that house into something that actually helps people who deserve help, instead of just enabling ungrateful family members. Ryan, please, I'm literally begging you to reconsider. And if any of you try to contact me again, if you show up at my house or my business, if you try to drag other family members or mutual friends into this drama, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly why you're homeless and exactly how much money you wasted before I finally learned to stop enabling your dysfunction. I hung up the phone and looked directly at Tyler, who was standing in my living room, looking like his entire world had just collapsed around him. You got your 5 minutes of explanation time. Now get out of my house and don't come back. He left without saying another word, and I watched through my window as he sat in his car for several minutes before finally driving away. 8 months later, I converted the house into a transitional living facility for men completing addiction recovery programs, partnered with local nonprofit organizations, completely renovated the entire property, and now it provides a safe, supportive environment for guys who are genuinely trying to rebuild their lives after hitting rock bottom. Men who actually appreciate second chances and understand the real value of honest work and personal responsibility. My parents eventually found a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. Tyler moved in with an old college buddy. Last I heard, he was working at a cell phone store making hourly wages, plus commission on sales.